Whiplash. The back and forth over the state's new immigration law leaves police and lawmakers wondering what's next.
Like watching a tennis match, the ball goes back and forth across the net constantly.
We explore how far the law goes.
It's very clear that this is meant to have statewide application.
And then President Biden visits Dallas. In studio, the man who welcomed him to the metro.
I regret nothing that the House did. I do not regret the impeachment process.
And the third most powerful man in state government in jeopardy of losing his seat. A challenger emerges late in the week for the top spot in the Texas House. All that and more just ahead.
This is Lone Star Politics from NBC5 and the Dallas Morning News.
What's going on the border is nothing short of catastrophic.
Tensions escalate along the Texas border. Late last week, we saw a new video of a group of migrants forcing their way through razor wire fencing and pushing past Border Patrol agents in El Paso. Border Patrol says migrants also cut the wire fencing and placed clothing over it in order to cross. This all happened as the legal battle over the state's new and controversial immigration law remains tied up in the courts. Those are the stakes this morning. We're taking a look at the legal battle over SB 4, including what it does and does not allow. Good Sunday morning. I'm Phil Prazan from NBC5.
And I'm Gromer Jeffers, political writer with the Dallas Morning News. Right now, the law allowing local and state police to arrest people they believe crossed into Texas illegally remains on hold. The week started with the law taking effect for about 5 minutes after the U.S. Supreme Court let a deadline pass.
About 5 minutes later, the High Court extended an order blocking SB 4 indefinitely. Then a reversal. Texas got the green light to enforce the law for a few hours. That changed again Tuesday night when the 5th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals blocked it again. Oral arguments followed Wednesday morning. That panel appeared skeptical. A hearing on the merit of the law is set for April 3rd.
So what if someone enters in, let's say, from Mexico into Arizona and lives there for 5 years, then moves to Texas? Are they covered?
I don't know the answer.
We heard "I don't know" a lot when covering this law. What's on paper for some is difficult to understand in reality. Here's a closer look at what specifically the law says.
Senate Bill 4 actually creates several new state crimes. The first is titled illegal entry into this state. An officer must have probable cause someone, quote, enters or attempts to enter this state directly from another country outside of a port of entry. Most, but not all, of that enforcement will likely happen along the border where the immigration crisis is front and center. Then there's another new crime called, quote, illegal re-entry by certain aliens. That's for people who've been deported or had a removal order before. That has the above language plus the words, quote, or is at any time found in this state. That can be enforced anywhere in Texas.
In fact, there were proposals to make this a border-only law, and those were rejected. It's very clear that this is meant to have statewide application.
Kristen Eder from the Texas Immigration Law Council tells me much of the enforcement of Senate Bill 4 will be up to individual officers and specific departments. Some may prioritize it more than others. It gives every officer and judge a larger role in immigration law.
It then authorizes and requires state judges to deport individuals back to ports of entry back to Mexico, essentially.
And while the legal battle continues, Governor Abbott says he will continue to focus on the border, in particular because the Biden administration stopped the Trump-era agreement with Mexico to keep migrants there until their cases play out.
Joe Biden has done nothing to build any type of border barrier. The only thing he's ever done with border barriers is try to tear down the ones that Texas has put on our border. It's because of these reasons. Because, number one, we are facing such dangerous situations, and number two, Joe Biden, through his actions, is violating the laws of the United States of America. That's exactly why I declared our authority under Article 1, Section 10 of the United States Constitution Texas has a right to defend ourselves, and we will use that authority to declare an invasion and fight back against that invasion.
In a statement, the Biden administration called SB 4 an example of Republican officials politicizing the border while blocking real solutions, saying, quote, "We continue to call on congressional Republicans to pass the bipartisan border security agreement, the toughest and fairest set of border reforms in decades." Fort Worth Congressman Mark Vesey points out that Republicans killed a border security bill.
Senate doesn't seem to be the problem. I hate saying that too as a House member. But it seems like, as far as the Republican Party is concerned, that the grown-ups in the Republican Party right now seem to be in the Senate. I mean, look, they were going to help us pass a immigration bill until Speaker Johnson killed it because Trump told us we could have cured the disorder at the border had Speaker Johnson just went ahead and passed along this bill that was written by the Republicans, that even Fox News called the toughest Republican border bill that they've ever seen, but they said no, that they wanted to keep the disorder at the border so Trump could run on it.
So, Gromer, this puts police in tough spots. One, just the back and forth has to be confusing, but then this just will increase the tension between the police officers and the people they are policing.
And that has been an issue for years, right? Mm-hmm. We've seen an issue of police stops, all of that. So they have to figure out if this law indeed holds up, how that's applied, what their policy is, how they will approach enforcing it, if they approach enforcing it at all.
It's been interesting to see the sheriffs, the county sheriffs seem to be open to talking about this, but the city police chiefs and the police leaders there, they don't seem to want to talk about it. We've asked a couple times and they haven't. They've said they were unavailable. What's the difference there?
Because most city police chiefs are nonpartisan and are appointed and are not elected. Sheriffs are partisan. They're elected in primaries, and so this is a hot issue for them, and it's just that simple.
Some fear this law will lead to racial profiling. Later today, the Coalition for Immigrant Rights will march to protest SB 4, starting at 2 o'clock in downtown Dallas at the Civic Garden Center.
A longtime Fort Worth Congresswoman and chair of the Appropriations Committee, Kay Granger, will step down from her powerful position early. According to Politico and several other D.C. outlets, she will help the next person House leadership appoints get settled into the appropriations job before she leaves Washington next year.
Okay, and still ahead, Air Force One landed at DFW Airport earlier this week. President Biden came to Texas for several campaign fundraisers coming up inside the private events that brought in millions of dollars. Plus this.
But I think at this point, leadership change is required in the Texas House.
After a divisive year in the Texas House, Speaker Dave Phelan has a new challenger, the latest twist in the inter-party struggle for Texas state government. You're watching Lone Star Politics. This week, independent candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is expected to announce his running mate. But most members of his family have already picked a side, supporting President Joe Biden. They do not want RFK Jr. or former President Trump to become president.
President Biden traveled to Texas for 3 private fundraisers. 2 were in Dallas Wednesday night. I was with the president, and I can tell you those events brought in more than $4.5 million. Biden's message to donors: look how far we've come.
Dallas County Judge Clay Jenkins met the president on the tarmac at DFW Airport before his fundraisers. And Judge Jenkins joins us in studio this morning. Thanks for being here.
Great to be with you.
Can we just start with what was it like in the room? What did the president talk about with the donors?
Well, with the donors, he laid out a vision. This is the choice between going back to President Trump or sticking with President Biden. And he laid out that choice because President Trump had asked a crowd, were you better off 4 years ago? And of course, 4 years ago, we were mired in COVID. President Trump and his team were bungling that. There were lots and lots of problems, and now we're beyond that, and I think we're in a much better place as a country.
So we know that candidates from both parties like to come to Texas, use it as an ATM, take money out. But what does the lay of the land look like in Texas? Do you think Biden can compete here and actually beat Donald Trump? Or is it more about down ballot candidates?
Well,
what do you think?
I think you're seeing the numbers shrink each time. So Hillary Clinton lost to Trump by 9. In the last election, Biden was 5.5 points behind.
Right.
And so, sure, you're going to see both candidates come into Texas, as they always do, and try to take a lot of money out of the state. But also, I think there is an opportunity for, if we get into an expansion map, the first 2 states in that map for Biden would be Florida and Texas. And hey, Texas was much closer than Florida and Ohio last time. So, you know, it's hard to know exactly what will happen there. I do think we're going to have a very close race between Colin Allred, my Baylor Bear brethren, and Ted Cruz.
So Dallas County is probably one of the most pro-Joe Biden counties in the state. There's been a lot of discussion about kind of the base being a little soft on Biden. What do you think the president's team needs to work on to get the very Democratic voters out?
Well, I'll tell you what, I was very impressed with just how fit the guy was. You know, we talked a little bit about our workout routines while we were on the tarmac, and I think that will fire up the base, because there's been talk that the president is too old, and it's not how old chronologically you are. Hey, I'm going to be 60 next week, and I just had twins, so you know, you never know, right?
Congratulations on that, by the way.
Yeah, we're fired up about that. Ramsey's doing well, twins are doing well, you know, it's about how old your ideas are. And I think President Trump's ideas are pretty old, right? They're authoritarianism and dividing people and picking on the others. And Biden's ideas are pretty new. They're pulling us out of COVID and making us, although it's difficult times, we're the strongest economy right now in the world. Everybody's having these supply chains and inflation problems that are beginning to come down now. But it's a different world now, but America's doing better than China or Great Britain or Canada or others.
But it's just selling that and getting that message out.
Yeah, I think he's got to sell that and get it out. And right now, people are focused on the president and kind of blaming the president for whatever they don't like. But they need to focus on the choice, right? The choice is between Donald Trump and Joe Biden. And when you focus on that choice, I think what most people will see is that we're better off now than we were 4 years ago.
In a few seconds we have left, and I apologize for the complicated question, but as before, the immigration law, your thoughts on that? It's been up and down.
Yeah, I agree with Eddie Garcia. Our officers are not trained to do that. Anytime, and this is a law, for the voters don't know, this is a law that allows people to be arrested for not being here legally by local law enforcement.
Right.
We're not trained to do it. The specter of the possibility of it happening leads to people not wanting to cooperate with officers and with us in crime scenes and on tips. And so it's not good. It'll do nothing to fix our broken borders. If people want to fix our broken borders, pass that border bill that President Trump tanked, or pass this budget that was just passed by the House last Friday that has more funding in it for our Border Patrol officers.
Let me know who wins that push-up contest between you and President Biden.
I will.
That's what you guys were talking about on the tarmac when you met him, right?
That's right.
All right.
All right, Dallas County Judge Clay Jenkins, thanks for joining us. And so to get a response from the Trump campaign on Biden's visit, I spoke with his communications director, Caroline Levitt.
It's a slap in the face to Texans that Joe Biden went to Texas to raise money, not to put forth real solutions to the crises that the great people of Texas are facing, namely the border crisis, which is entirely Joe Biden's fault. He reversed all of President Trump's very effective immigration and border policies, and now Texas has been enduring the brunt of the invasion that we've seen over the past 3.5 years. And Joe Biden not only has not put forth any solutions to fix the crisis, he's actually making it more difficult for Texas to protect itself from this illegal migrant invasion, which is only getting worse.
President Biden has outraised former President Trump by quite some of it. And with the context of President Trump has a lot of legal bills that a lot of this money is going towards. Is there a concern in the campaign that the Trump team may not have as many resources as the Biden team when it comes to this?
No, we are fully confident that now that President Trump is the official nominee of the Republican Party, all donors will come to the table to fund our effort to make America great again. We are already seeing an astronomical increase in support from both big dollar donors and small dollar grassroots donors across the country as Republicans understand that this election on November the 5th is a binary choice between the former president who made our country safer, stronger, and more prosperous, and the current president in Joe Biden who has led our country to chaos and division at every single turn. So we're confident we'll have the resources that we need to ensure a big victory for President Trump and this nation on November 5th.
So when it comes to the border, the former president has been pretty adamant about returning to the Remain in Mexico policy, finishing the border wall. Securing the boarding is a priority for him. But in immigration, what are we going to do if he's elected with the folks who are already here, who may be living in Texas without status?
Send them home. President Trump has made a very bold promise that he will launch the largest mass deportation operation in American history.
So, Gromer, President Biden was here for fundraising. Do you think he's going to have an advantage over President Trump because the former president has a bunch of legal bills from his civil cases and his criminal cases that are going to happen? Maybe the hardest to beat will be over what he did on January 6th.
Yeah, he will have a fundraising advantage. That is clear. But whether it makes a difference in the outcome, that's another question. Americans know these guys. They know who they are. You want to have the best ground game in the battleground states as possible. Trump should have enough money to do that. But yes, without question, Biden will have an advantage. It's just we just don't know if it'll show up in the end result.
What's that money going to go to? Just advertising, or just for people who don't know, what else do the campaigns use that money for?
To pay folks, to pay your staff, but voter turnout, to get voters from their couches to the polls, and that could be costly. And you're right, television and all of that.
We're going to be bombarded.
Oh yes.
All right, we're still months away from the start of the next legislative session, but already there's drama still ahead. Who's looking to push Dade Phelan out of the speaker's seat, and what it will take? Next on Lone Star Politics.
While preparing for a runoff, House Speaker Dade Phelan now faces yet another challenge.
Republican Representative Tom Oliverson, an anesthesiologist from Cyprus, says he will challenge the House Speaker for that job when lawmakers return to Austin in January. It's considered the third most powerful position in state government.
Under my speakership, there would be no Democratic chairs in the House, and let me expound upon that briefly. It is dysfunctional. I myself, in the 2 terms that Dade Phelan has been Speaker, have experienced in both sessions my legislation being killed by a Democrat chair. It is one of those situations where you put somebody in a position of power and then you're surprised that they actually use the power that you gave them. And I am going to stand up today and say the quiet part out loud and just say it is time for that change. I am going to do what the people of this state have been asking the majority party in the Texas House to do for the better part of a decade, which is to lead as a majority.
Representative Oliverson is chair of the Committee on Insurance and vice chair of the House GOP caucus. He was first elected to the House of Representatives in 2016. In a statement, Phelan responded to the news of the challenge, saying, quote, "My focus remains on reelecting our Republican colleagues in runoffs and strengthening our majority in the Texas House." Continuing to say, that's the job of the Texas Speaker, and it's where my focus is and will continue to be. And Speaker Phelan still faces David Covey, a former county party chair in the May runoff in his home district. Former President Trump, Attorney General Ken Paxton, and Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick are all backing Covey in response to the House's attempted impeachment of Paxton last year. Paxton was acquitted by the Senate. This is the latest example of many forces aligning to oust Speaker Phelan and really how the Texas House operates, right?
It really is. And Phil, we were both there for an extraordinary impromptu news conference that Phelan had last week in Dallas, and I was struck, Richardson actually, I was struck by how he came out swinging, but there is urgency there. You mentioned everybody from Trump to Patrick being against him and Ken Paxton. And so first, we have to see if he survives in May, and then we'll see about the speaker's race.
What's interesting to me is the Texas House is one of the last remaining bipartisan coalitions in the country. It's conservative-led, and what part of Phelan's argument is they can pass the conservative legislation that they want to, but the Democrats are still part of the team, so to speak.
Well, yeah, it's representational government. You just can't, in theory, wipe the Democrats out, well, some of them want to, though.
That's what they do in D.C.
Right, and look at the gridlock. The pushback that Republicans have who support the speaker is, what legislation have we not passed? We've passed a litany of conservative legislation and policies. What more should we be doing? That's the question.
That's all the time we have. Stay tuned for Meet the Press with Kristen Welker. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you back here next Sunday for more Lone Star Politics.